copy, April 27th, 1990.
Hi, I'm Terry Murphy.
And I'm Alan Frio.
This UFO in Florida. We'll show you the astonishing evidence. And later...
Who say they've seen UFOs, and frankly, most of them are pretty easy to dismiss. That's not the case with Ed and Frances Walters. They took lie detector tests and passed them. They turned down a lucrative offer from the National Enquirer. And they've turned their evidence over to experts for analysis. Still not convinced they had a close encounter with a UFO? Well, take a look at their pictures. The Florida Panhandle, a land of snow-white sand dunes, gentle backwater shoals, glimmering beaches. It is here that the tiny affluent community of Gulf Breeze rests, and it is here that the largest concentration of UFO sightings in the world has occurred. Ed and Frances Walters have lived in Gulf Breeze for the past 9 years. Frances is president of the PTA, and Ed is a successful general contractor. It was nearly 2.5 years ago that the Walters world was shattered.
That particular evening, November the 11th, 1987, was absolutely astounding. I had come home, normal day's work, taking care of contracting business, sat at my office, noticed a glow through the window.
Grabbing his Polaroid camera, Ed raced out the front door of his house.
I could see clearly this was not something that should be in the skies over our little town. I could see the superstructure.
Ed began taking snapshots of the UFO when suddenly he was hit with a humming blue beam.
The blue light has this ability to just stop you from moving, as if you were suddenly encased in concrete.
Ed was lifted up in the air by the aliens. All of a sudden, the beam was gone, and Ed Walters was sent crashing back to Earth. Thus began a 5.5-month ordeal for the Walters family, during which time they had over 20 encounters with the unidentified flying objects.
We had to report that this thing was there, and we had to tell our community. But I didn't want to be known as the builder who sees UFOs.
Ed Walters took his photographs to the local paper, which immediately published them. More than 150 townspeople came forward admitting they saw the flying objects too. Then, during Ed Walters' 9th encounter with the UFOs, he shot this home videotape of the spacecraft. Charles Flanagan was at first skeptical of the sightings, but now believes the Walters have seen UFOs.
It appears to me that they, whoever they might be, has opened a window here for further education to the world, perhaps. Certainly substantiated by all of the pictures that Ed and Frances Walters took.
Then one night, Ed and Frances heard a noise in their backyard. Ed ran to the bedroom door and looked outside.
Right on the other side of the French door, 12 inches or so from my face, was the backlit creature, being, entity, whatever you want to call it, standing right there looking in. I fell back, like she says, across the bedroom, hid into the closet. It was about 3.5, 4 foot tall.
It had like a glowing stick or rod in its hand, and I didn't know if this was a weapon of some sort, if we were better off apart so that it would have to try and get both of us. But then I noticed that it wasn't even looking at me. It never looked at anything but at him.
Brenda Pollock sits on the Gulf Breeze City Council. She is one of the more than 300 people in town who have seen a UFO.
It was a weekday night, about 6:20, 6:30 in the evening, and we had had dinner at home, and I was doing the dinner dishes, and I heard my husband scream, "Get your camera and come quick."
What Brenda Pollock saw that night was a black dot, but her camera shot this time-lapse photograph showing an erratic, multicolored light.
They call me a skeptic. I've never actually witnessed what I consider a spacecraft.
Jerry Brown has been on the Gulf Breeze police force for 19 years.
What do you think they are?
Well, I think the military has a lot to do with it, but I also think mass hysteria has a lot to do with it.
Radar contact 5 miles west of Sunday.
Military officials refused to comment on the UFO sightings to hard copy, but the Federal Aviation Administration in Pensacola did grant us an interview.
We have absolutely nothing in our records to support sightings of any kind.
If somebody wants to choose to believe that it's a military craft, God bless them. Let them believe what they want to believe. If they want to choose to believe that it can't have happened at all, that's fine. Whatever it takes for them to get through the night is what they should believe.
But for Ed and Frances Walters, it is the night that brings the possibility of yet another alien encounter. I don't know, they're great pictures. There is so much evidence that aliens have been visiting Gulf Breeze that the Mutual UFO Network has scheduled its 21st annual convention there on July 6th. Anyone who has had an encounter with a UFO is invited.
Pretty convincing pictures there.
Sure is.
And Terry, we've got another story coming up tomorrow about a man most of us remember as a boy.
Identifiable origin landed in a wooded area. The object they watched soon after disappeared into the sky. The phenomenon of unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, exists. Since biblical times, man has reported seeing various oddities in the sky. Modern science can explain more than 90% of the incidents, but in some cases, explanations appear to defy human understanding or believability.
On the 26th of July of 1952, I observed 7 star-like objects flying over Washington, D.C. They made headlines around the world the following day, and since then, I've read everything I could find on the UFO subject.
They impressed you that much?
Yes.
In the United States, the UFO phenomenon has officially been recognized both by government and public investigators ever since June 24th, 1947, when the Air Force responded to a bizarre reporting from a pilot. Kenneth Arnold was flying his plane around the south rim of Mount Rainier in Washington. He reported that as he flew south, 9 flat silver objects closed in on his small plane and proceeded to follow alongside. At the same time, that encounter was verified by ground radar units. The pie-pan-shaped craft looked like nothing Arnold had ever seen before. They did not attempt to interfere with Arnold's flying and dispersed soon after they had appeared. With the assistance of a local news reporter at the time, the term flying saucer was born. If this event initiated public interest, an incident near Roswell, New Mexico just 8 days later would permanently guarantee public fascination. The local headline read, "Air Force captures flying saucer." The story was generated by a press release from Walter Haut, an Air Force lieutenant at the time.
I got a phone call from Colonel Blanchard, who was the base commander, telling me that the base had in their possession parts of a flying saucer.
Lieutenant Haut says the story of the mysterious crash was relayed to him by his commanding officer this way. During the late evening hours of July 2nd, 1947, rancher Mac Brazel, who lived on this piece of land about 75 miles northwest of Roswell, New Mexico, heard a thunderous clapping of noise outside his small ranch home, short ways in the distance. He wrote it off simply as thunder at the time from a passing storm. However, the following morning, he was riding his horse along this fence line when he came across this ridge and spotted something he couldn't believe. Spread out over an area of about 1/4 of a mile was what appeared to be the debris from some sort of flying craft. Air Force Major Jesse Marcel was dispatched to the crash site to investigate the debris. Under orders from General Roger Ramey, Marcel never spoke about what he saw until some 30 years later.
I was amazed at what I saw. The amount of debris that was scattered over such an area. It took me a while to realize that there's something strange about it. What it was, I don't know. I still don't know.
After inspecting the incredibly odd-looking material which had fallen from the sky, Major Jesse Marcel loaded up his car and a van full of the stuff and brought it back here to his home in town. Over the next few hours, Marcel and his 12-year-old son began piecing together the debris on the Marcel kitchen floor.
Well, there's a lot of foil-like remnants. That was finely divided. There was a lot of black rubbery-type plastic material. It wasn't flexible, though, like rubber, but it was the same color like bakelite material. And then there were the apparent structural members, like I-beams.
Jesse Marcel Jr. is now a family doctor in Montana. Though it's been 43 years since he handled the bizarre material, the event is vividly embraced in his memory.
Of all the debris, what stood out in your mind the most?
It has to be the structural members, the I-beams. They had what appeared to be writing on the inner surface of them. This writing consisted of various types of geometric figures.
The military moved in on Marcel's house a few hours later and confiscated the debris. The following day, Walter Haught's press release that a flying disc had been recovered was altered by military brass to suggest that the debris actually came from a fallen weather balloon. Marcel was ordered to appear with the debris for photographers to confirm that story. But the debris Marcel posed with was not authentic. The actual debris had been replaced with that of a weather balloon. Marcel was ordered not to make the switch known. Within 36 hours of the discovery of the strange fallen craft, the debris was brought here to Hangar 84 at Roswell Army Airfield. But the material wasn't here for long, because within hours of its arrival, the military was already ordering it flown to a secret location, and Hangar 84 sealed and placed off limits as it remains to this day. Bob Shirkey was an assistant flight safety officer at Roswell working in Hangar 84 when the debris was loaded for transfer. He remembers seeing for a brief instant pieces of material that looked something like sheets of aluminum. What was more astounding to him, however, was a conversation this Army officer had years later with his friend, the town's mortician. The mortician reportedly received an emergency request from the military at Roswell the night of the crash.
They wanted to know how many child-sized caskets they had available. 3 foot, 4 foot, and I don't recall now what he said in terms of how many he sent out there, but there was supposed to have been 3 or 4 bodies.
Shirkey says immediately following the crash, everyone involved was transferred out of Roswell.
I was transferred to the Philippines. All the guards that were out there in the prairie, they were all transferred.
To this day, the government refuses to comment on the Roswell crash and allegations that what they recovered may have been a UFO with bodies. Whatever happened at Roswell, new details are surfacing now more than ever. And there are several reasons why after 40 years the puzzle is beginning to come together. First of all, many of the people involved are nearing the end of their lives and want to get their part of the story out. Also, the Freedom of Information Act instituted in 1974 opened up an avenue for researchers to obtain UFO-related information. But most importantly, some scientists feel the government may now be trying to slowly let the public in on a story so profound it has taken 40 years to prepare people to hear it.
Very strange. And tomorrow in his second report, Kirkham will examine the most convincing sightings of UFOs.
This is your weekend. A national conference is underway in North Park. This was the first of 3 nights, and Jim Wilkerson was there, the king of weird.
What a setup, I'll tell you. No, actually, you know, I don't know if there's anything more interesting to more people worldwide than UFOs and flying saucers. And although we do have a lot of fun with the subject, to many people it's a very serious one, including those amazing stories.
These craft, the only way you can explain their behavior is by the generation of an artificial gravity field around the craft.
Bill Hamilton has written a book about the alleged government cover-up of UFO incidents, including some crashes. Why did they keep it a secret?
It was a matter of air defenses, national defense against a foreign technology.
Hundreds came across a broad spectrum of beliefs. The Crystal people are here with the star of that show, this crystal skull, which is said to be 10,000 years old. There are many books about the space visitors, and there are many toys. But most of the people here are serious curious. Are we being visited?
I think there hasn't been a point in history, biblically or otherwise, where we haven't been visited by our elder brothers or sisters.
In the Antelope Valley, have been reporting that they're seeing some sort of aircraft that instead of having the traditional jet kind of propulsion sound, has what they describe as a pulsing sound. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, that may be just a hypersonic vehicle. They have these hypersonic vehicles they've been developing called wave riders.
Hamilton says many presidents have been briefed about a spacecraft crash in New Mexico in 1947, but it's still covered up.
Well, we do know that President Eisenhower was briefed, President Carter was briefed, and probably at least and President Reagan was briefed. In fact, President Reagan made several statements during his term in office, which indicates that he was very, very interested.
And remember the mystery circles in southern England recently? These symbols appeared overnight in many different fields. Jan-Erik Beckjord says that he has deciphered some of them, a 4,000-year-old Norse language. What's the first one say?
This is the place of the devil, an evil place. The second one says, this is a dangerous place to camp.
He says somebody's giving us a warning. Have you got a better theory?
You know, the story, there's the Clarion Hotel is where the conference continues for the next couple of days, and the story that fascinates me most is that 1947 Roswell, New Mexico incident, where the Associated Press reported worldwide that a flying saucer crashed with aliens killed, and we still don't know the rest of that story, and that's the one that they say is still being covered up, one of many.
Sounds weird, but there are a lot of believers.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Jim.
All right, well, if we would picture interest.